For my MIDI pedal, the Romantics Dynamite, I decided to keep the aluminum of the pedal bare and to use a monochrome design etching. This sent me into a rabbit hole of tests, which I think might be interesting to some people, so I decided to make a video about that. My initial intent was to use a laser printer to make the mask and use base etching, as shown on multiple websites and forums online. From now on, I will refer to this method as chemical etching. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't an option because the toner from my printer didn't stick to the aluminum, regardless of the method I used. I later discovered that this is common with brother laser printers. This is when I decided to buy a laser engraver, which would allow me to spray the aluminum with a paint that could be lasered without issues, leaving a perfect mask for etching. After a couple of attempts with chemical and electrical etching I will talk more about later, an idea dawned on me: why not just spray the pedal and laser out the whole paint to leave the desired pattern only? While it technically works, it leaves a very thin layer of paint, which will easily be scratched out, especially if you try to polish the rest of the aluminum afterwards. You may get lasting results with clear coating, but the whole reason I decided to go with etching was because I wanted to leave a nice bare aluminum finish, so the solution wasn't for me. If you decide to go this route, I think UV printing or stickers may be a better option for you. Before continuing with the actual tests, let me present the contenders for this video. On my left, we have chemical etching. I will not talk about the specific products in this video, but you can find a lot of information online, but please always be very careful when doing that. So without getting into the details, the process is as follows. Dilute the base in water, apply the mask on, and let the exposed metal be eaten away. On the other corner, we have electrical etching, which uses electricity and an electrolyte solution to remove the aluminum layer. So in this case, the anode will be a piece of aluminum and the cathode will be your pedal, and you will submerge them both in salted water and apply a current to jump to the conclusion, and your mileage might absolutely vary. The best results that I got in my setup were about 30 minutes with 3 volts. The amount of time you leave the solution in the bath, the voltage, and the distance between the two plates are the main factors for electrical etching. On my first attempt with chemical etching, I tried to apply a brush to the exposed metal. While this seemed to work for other people, I failed to make this work in this project simply because it would peel off the paint. Another thing that I realized, even though my first attempt with electrical etching was more successful, was that regardless of the method used, a lot of details would go away, and this is the first lesson. Regardless if you do chemical or if you do electric etching, the mask that you use is really important. So I went from this design to this design, simplified it a little bit. I want to take this opportunity to thank Wycan, who made the design for the pedal. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and I will add the link to his social media in the description. After simplifying the design, I also tweaked the details with my laser engraver in order to get better lines that wouldn't get chipped that easily. On the subject of paint and lasers, first of all, be really careful which paint you're using, and also always know that even if it's not highly toxic, you should still have a ventilation for your system. My personal optimal result was 15 millimeters per second at 15% and 2 passes. And this is on 2 layers of paint, and be really careful not to use toxic products. The second attempt I did for both the acid and the electrical etching was when I decided which method I was going to use. So I feel that for the second time both tests were really good, but I realized that chemical etching attacked the paint way quicker, and I'm going to go over the pro and cons of each method now, because it was actually the last time I used chemical etching. I will talk more about electrical etching afterwards, but for me the real strength of chemical etching is that since you're applying the base yourself, you can choose which areas will be more affected, and so if you have finer details or things that need to be more etched into the metal, you can do that. And I think it's a great advantage of chemical etching, which electrical etching, I guess, if you do anode and cathodes in certain ways. Maybe there's a way to influence it, but in my case, since I was using a small amount of water, I couldn't see anything inside, because once you apply the electricity, everything gets bubbly and you have no way to see the advancement, and if you take it away, there's a risk. So you might be really precise with chemical etching, but for me it was either gaining a very, very thin edge or accepting that my contours would be blurry just because it tends to spread a lot and it tends to dissolve paint way quicker than electric, and that's the reason why I kept doing electrical etching for subsequent tests. And if you see, it's getting better and better just because I'm testing different values and I'm getting good results for my specific setup. Another little tip here, because pedals tend to be quite expensive, especially the big ones I'm using. You can also use, if you had a bad etch on the pedal itself, you can use the lid to make another test, so at least you can reuse the pedal. If you've had bad results with an etch, you can also try to sand it off, but trust me, I've done it once and it's a lot of work for very little at the end. If you're interested in the Romatics My Dynamite, there's a lot of videos on the channel talking about it. There's new versions that come out with free open source code, so feel free to check the other videos. The biggest takeaway I would take from this video is test, and it was really important for me to log everything. Sometimes you would think, I will tweak this setting just a little bit, and then it either works perfectly and doesn't work, and since you haven't recorded it, you actually have to do it one more time. And so if you had to take only two things from this video, the first one would be to absolutely be really careful with security. Either electrical or chemical etching have a lot of risks associated to them, so please be careful with that. And the second one is record everything you do, test, and then you will probably get good results. I would say the most important step, regardless of the kind of etching you use, is to have a logo that doesn't have that much big of an area, because you can get a lot of unfinished or dirty results if you have big patches of black. I find it's the case especially with electrical etching, because chemical etching you can really just put the base within that area, but with electrical etching it's a little bit more difficult. And the second thing is just execution. It can get really frustrating because you will get worse results sometimes when you tweak some settings, but yeah, that's the name of the game when you're creating stuff. And as always, if you have any questions, please put them in the comment. I will be happy to reply to them. See you in the next video.